Good morning to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here. I want to do a real quick update on Elsa and go over the 11 o'clock advisory, specifically the forecast discussion from the National Hurricane Center, and just a couple of things related to what's happening right now and what the track looks like. And then later this afternoon, after we get the 12Z guidance in from the GFS and the Euro and the HWRF, we'll take a more in-depth look at the modeling side of this. But for right now, just a quick summary as to what's going on. First, here's the track map. This is updated from our tracking map, the interactive tracking map off the HurricaneTrack Insider site. Elsa now back down to tropical storm intensity. I'll show you why in just a moment. And as you can see, the track here takes it right across the Tiburon Peninsula there of Haiti, and then into southeastern Cuba, across a pretty good stretch of the island of Cuba, maybe across the westernmost portion of the Florida Keys, the Dry Tortugas area, and assuming it survives all of this, then a landfall in Florida and then up into the southeast United States. But this part of the forecast up here, I should just have a gigantic question mark graphic that I can just, bam, stamp it on there, because it's a huge question mark as to whether or not this part of the forecast track and the cone is even going to exist. All of that's going to be completely dependent upon whether or not Elsa survives the trek across these big land masses down here, most notably is Cuba. So let's zoom in real quick and take a look at what we see and where this is headed. Right now, the center of circulation is located just to the south of the Dominican Republic and the Haiti border here. And the forecast is for it to continue to move off very quickly to the west-northwest. Again, maybe making landfall down here close to the extreme southwest part of Haiti. So there could be some very heavy rain that moves in across this region. And with the mountainous terrain down here, zoom in even further and you can see that. That would be a big problem. We know that this area is very prone to natural disasters, especially from tropical cyclones. And so this will be a problem for the area, even though the wind is coming down. It's not all about how strong the winds are. There's other impacts, and rain is a very big part of that. So it does look like it will remain enough intact to bring some inclement weather, I mean that's an understatement there, to parts of southeast Cuba. And this is really critical down here where the center goes. If it's just a little bit more on the southern part of the cone of uncertainty over here and misses more of this land mass, then there will be more of Elsa's inner core, if you want to call it that, or its low-level vortex intact for it to go over the rest of Cuba. So, once we get past about the next 12 to 18 hours, this part's going to become important because that holds the key to everything that happens up here later on. All right, so let's take a look at the satellite imagery here, and you can see what's going on with Elsa this morning. The visible satellite, I like this animation because you can really see the problem, if you want to call it that, which is it's good for people, bad for the tropical cyclone down here. One thing that you can tell, there is a large cluster of thunderstorms, certainly near the low-level center, but the low-level center is right there, and it's exposed mostly, kind of half exposed, and the reason is a couple of parts to it, because of the fast motion of Elsa moving along very, very fast. And there is some northwesterly shear coming down, blowing against it as it heads into the direction of the shear. It's going against the shear, if you will. And they're running into each other down here, creating this literal shear zone where the tops of the thunderstorms are getting blown backwards instead of being able to wrap around that circulation and fully engulf the core, allowing everything to line up. And that's a big disruptive factor when you see that. Nevertheless, underneath all of this deep convection that is there, tropical storm conditions, maybe some gusts to hurricane force in there, a few lightning strikes, as you can see, and even some of these outer bands reaching portions of Puerto Rico with a few lightning strikes over that area. But any of this very heavy rainfall that gets lifted up over the rugged terrain of Hispaniola could get wrung out in the form of very heavy rainfall, and that could create some flash flooding and mudslides, and that can be lethal. There's no question about it. So looking at the discussion, and these are very, very important. A lot of times I come on and talk about what I'm seeing and what the models are showing and what other people are saying on social media. And we don't want to forget that there is this beautiful product out there, I think so anyway, from the National Hurricane Center that's written by a real person. It's not a bot or anything like that. It's not an automatically generated text product. This is written by a real person, and I always like to see who wrote it because I know many of these forecasters down here, and this one is Dr. Jack Bevan. He's been a friend of mine, and he's a lot of chasers' friends, if you will, in the community of storm chasing as a whole. Dr. Bevan chases storms, and he's been out into Florida. I think it was Faye in 2008. He actually went out and sort of chased that around a little bit down in South Florida. But I like to see who wrote the forecast, especially if I know the forecaster personally. It just helps me to understand more about what they're thinking. And that's exactly what this product is all about. It's called the Forecast Discussion. And there it is, discussion number 13 for Elsa. And it literally lets us get into the head of the forecaster. What is Dr. Bevan thinking? So the first paragraph here tells us about the recon data and the structure and the pressure and all of that. And really not much in the way of data to support it being a hurricane any longer. The pressure is up to close to 999. I mean, come on. It's definitely weakening. So the operational intensity is reduced to 60 knots, which is about 70 miles per hour. And then the next paragraph talks about the motion, the direction that Elsa is headed, where it is expected to go, and why. And that is discussed in here about the subtropical ridge and the upper level low that's sitting out there, so forth and so on. And then the track guidance is in much better agreement than this time yesterday. That's an important sentence. And Elsa is expected to pass near or over southwestern Haiti, Cuba, and the eastern Gulf of Mexico, or Florida during the next 3 days or so. After that, it's likely to cross portions of the southeastern U.S. on the way into the Atlantic. And then he goes on to finish that particular paragraph that the new NHC forecast has only minor adjustments from the previous one, and is basically right in the consensus models. So no big changes to the forecast overall. We're starting to see agreement amongst the models, at least on track. Then the part about intensity here, and this is important, and I showed you this on satellite. Elsa continues to be affected by northwesterly shear, partly due to the fast-forward motion, but there's also some stronger upper-level winds coming out of the northwest, and that is expected to continue for a little while longer. But later on, it's possibly going to relax that shear. So Dr. Bevan says, while some shear is likely to continue when the storm is near or over the eastern Gulf, upper-level divergence associated with an aforementioned upper-level low, he talks about it in this paragraph. And divergence is when the air spreads out in the upper-level atmosphere. It doesn't converge or come together. It's spreading out. And that might allow for some re-intensification as this gets closer to Florida. But he goes on to say that the intensity forecast calls for more weakening in the first 48 hours than previously forecast, and then some re-intensification over the Gulf. Although the first 3 days here, he says, the forecast is at the upper edge of the intensity guidance. So it's pretty generous there the first 3 days. And I think this is a big clue right here that it's possible that Elsa basically gets completely disrupted between now and the next 3 days over the land masses there of the Caribbean, what we call the Greater Antilles. And then this important paragraph here about the fact that it's a tropical storm. There are hurricane warnings still out there in case there is a short-lived re-intensification due to a convective burst. And I'll just show you that real quick on satellite. This is what Dr. Bevan is talking about right here. One of these things, these convective bursts, can bring down some strong gusty winds, and that could reach hurricane force even in a small area. It counts. It doesn't have to be a big area. All right, and so finally the last paragraph that Dr. Bevan has written. Just trying to get all my words out today. Given that there is still uncertainty in the track forecast and the degree of land interaction with Hispaniola and Cuba, users are urged to factor in some of this uncertainty. And, the bottom line is, if it survives the track over land, and this paragraph down here in the key messages, then there could be some risks of storm surge, heavy rain, and wind, and so forth for not only Florida, but the Southeast, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. But all of this right here is 100% dependent upon what happens over the next little while, a couple of days, as Elsa deals with this. So we won't know. I mean, there's just no way to know without just looking out the window, as I talk about often, in this case, satellite imagery and other observations, what's happening. So the computer models can forecast all they want, but at the end of the day, we got to look and see what's going on right now. And over the next couple of days, we can do that using aircraft recon data, satellite, and then even once it gets close enough to Florida radar, pick it up on radar. And it's entirely possible that this gets disrupted so much that it's just kind of a remnant circulation and mid-level swirl that comes into Florida. Let me make one thing very clear. It's not going to just go away where there's nothing else there. That doesn't happen very often at all, and that's not going to happen with this system because it was a pretty large piece of energy that originated off of Africa, has come all the way over. So it doesn't just vanish. It could dissipate in terms of being a named system, yes. It could be a remnant low or a tropical wave again, open up into a tropical wave where it's just a sharp wind shift instead of a full rotary closed circulation. Sure, those things can happen, but it's not going to just go away. There's still going to be something for Florida. To the extent of what that something is, I do not know. We do not know. You do not know, and neither does Dr. Bevan. We don't know. We'll have to just wait and see. So I will take a look at the guidance from the 12Z runs, as reliable or not as they may be. We'll see what they say, and we will go from there. I'll put that update on around 4 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time. All right? I am Mark Stott of HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching. We'll talk about it again in just a few hours.